Good evening and welcome to World Investor Week 2020. On behalf of the Center for Capital Markets and Risk Management, I am Bangalore, in association with the National Stock Exchange of India and the Securities and Exchange Board of India. I, Anvesha, welcome you all. Our speaker for today evening is Dr. Rohtas Kumar, Director, Risk and Analytics at CRISIL Global Research and Analytics. Dr. Rohtas Kumar is a proud alumni of IIM Bangalore. He has been associated with the research and analytics industry throughout his career. He held the position of Associate Director in UBS, followed by General Manager, Research and Analytics in Cognizant Technology Solutions. He is currently the Director of Risk and Analytics in CRISIL Global Research and Analytics. We welcome you, sir. The topic for the webinar is How has risk management changed due to the pandemic? The webinar will be followed by a Q&A session. The chat window will be switched off throughout the webinar. Thank you.
Should I go?
Yes, sir, you can begin now, sir.
Thanks, Anveshna, for introducing me. I would like to thank Professor Jaidev and World Investor Week organizers for inviting me for this presentation. The topic for today is model risk management. What are the implications and consequences of pandemic, which we are going through? Just to set the context, this is mainly in context of banking and financial services industry, how the risk is managed there, and what happened due to the COVID and all. I mean, I was not very clear about the audience for this session. I was told that it is a mix of students, professors, and then people from industry. So I have kept the presentation a lot more generic. There are not much technicalities involved. Kept it easy so that it is easy to understand and we can gain something out of this. Before we begin the topic, let me just set the context. In banking and financial services industry, models are being used for decision-making purpose, whether these are used for valuation of securities, whether these are used for valuation of say derivative products, equity, bonds, or whether we are building models for credit decisioning, taking decisions on who should be given loan, who should not be given loan, and then on various aspects. There are also models being built for acquisition of new customers, and then cross-selling. Different kind of models are being built, and all these models are helping banks in decision making at different levels. Modeling is in existence in banking system for quite some time. But I think it took a lot more prominence after the meltdown in 2008, 2009, when financial crisis happened. A lot of models which were being used at that point in time were used as black box. People who developed those models, they have built or developed those models, and then they may have left the bank, or they have moved around, and models are still being used. People have no clue what models were producing, and I mean they were just input and output, and then it was a black box. So post meltdown, regulators across the world have come down heavily on banks that they should put infrastructure and systems in place to make sure that whatever models are doing, bank or people are aware of what these models are doing, and they are doing what they are intended to do. Since then, a lot of things have happened in model risk management space. We have moved quite a lot, and then this pandemic happened, uh, where we again felt a kind of crisis in this area. So I'll walk you through some of it, and because I mean I said in the beginning that the audience is mixed, so I have also kept introduction to model risk management so that people are aware what we are talking about. So with this, I'll start my presentation. The content is, the agenda is brief introduction to model and model risk, then model risk management, what are the key themes around which it is built, what framework with which we are working, uh, and what are some of the best practices which we have gained over the period of time since the last financial crisis. And then in the context of current pandemic, uh, what has happened, what kind of challenges we have faced, and in view of those challenges, what are the learnings and way forward for us. So I'll move to model and model risk. Uh, as I have already spoken about, there is increasing use of models in decision-making process. A model, the definition of a model, there may be different definitions, but in banking and financial services, Federal Reserve's SR 11.7 guidelines are taken as the key guidelines on the basis of which the model risk management has been built around. So as per that definition, model is a term which refers to quantitative method, systems, or approach that applies statistical, economic, financial, or mathematical theories, techniques, and assumptions to process input data into quantitative estimates. There are three components to a model. There is an information input component which delivers assumptions and data to the model. The second component is processing component, which transforms inputs into estimates, and the third component is the reporting component, which actually translates this data into useful business information on the basis of which we can take decisions. Typically, in a bank, there would be a variety of models, whether these are pricing evaluation models, there are market risk models, traded risk models, algorithmic trading models, credit risk, asset management, wealth management, stress testing. Then there are operational risk models, which look at the operational aspects of business, treasury risk, and then there are models which take care of the financial crime or anti-money laundering aspects within banking industry. Typically, in a financial institution or a major bank, they will have 1,000+ models, and then there will be few thousand end user computing spreadsheets, which will also be kind of models. And then there will be some expert judgment or qualitative models. These are classified as models because although the input component to these qualitative models is qualitative in nature, but the output we use based on that is quantitative in nature. What is not included as part of model risk management is definitive calculators, where we or rule-based systems where definitive answers are there, and there is no element of uncertainty involved. Moving on to next slide, as we have models, so models going with them model risk. So what is model risk? Actually, a model is representative a representation of a real life scenario. So because real life scenarios are pretty complex, so we build simplistic models to represent that scenario. And because it can never represent the reality 100%, there is always an element of risk, which we call as model error. And so this will be taken care of as part of the risk appetite, which every organization or bank would decide for themselves, that how much risk they are willing to take in the course of working with these models, and how to manage this. Again, the definition of risk is also, model risk is also given by Federal Reserve SR 11.7 guidelines. It says that the potential for adverse consequences from decision based on incorrect or misused model output and reports. There are two elements or reasons for model risk. One is there may be fundamental errors or inaccuracies in the model. These inaccuracies may come because of design, whether we have chosen a wrong methodology which may not be applicable in that particular context, uh, or it could be because of the development issue. When we are developing the model, we have identified a methodology, but we may not be using right set of data, or we may not have converted a mathematical equation currently. The third element is implementation errors. Implementation could be when we are putting this model in operation, or system. At the implementation time, there may be some errors. For example, there may be coding errors which may result in faulty output, or something like that. The second element of model risk is incorrect or inappropriate use. So models are intended for a specific purpose. The methodology which we have used to develop a model, it can be applied in a certain context. But what happens over the period of time as business change, things on ground change, but we continue to use that model, and that leads to unintended use or not fit for purpose model. Uh, so these are the two major elements. I will not go in much further details here. This area has been under high scrutiny with the regulators across the world, whether it is Federal Reserve in US, PRA, EBA, FINMA. They have come out with different regulations on banks, that they should have a robust risk model risk management infrastructure in place, and manage these things. Uh, in a nutshell, what we can say is, when we are bringing models, we are also bringing model risk. The two major elements are fundamental errors, or unintended use or incorrect use. Now I will move to the next section where we are talking about model risk management. Uh, so, so what are the key themes around building a model risk management framework? The first is, as we understand, models are representing reality, which can never be 100% reflected in a model. We cannot completely eliminate model risk. However, we can measure it and we can manage it. Uh, how we can manage it? So post 2008 2009 meltdown, uh, uh, the regulators have taken a call that it should be an important function within the banking organization. It should have a central role, and with that, you may be seeing that this function is rolling up to chief risk officer, who is also one of the key member of the executive council, or decision making authority. Uh, Another aspect or the key theme which has come across is, there has to be independence of development and review or validation process. So person who has developed a model should pass it on to another person who will independently review that model, challenge the methodology used in the model, data used in the model, do the independent testing and verifies that whatever model developer or the owner is talking about, the intended use of the model, intended input and output to the model is actually correct or not. Other element is, I mean, before the financial crisis, most of the banks had, uh, I think, pretty decent size model development groups. Whether these people were developing statistical models or stochastic models or mathematical models for different category of risk. But there was no department or division where people may be doing the review or validations. So this function within the bank has increased significantly over the last 10, 11 years. Uh, and they're trying to tackle the two elements of model risk, whether it is fundamental error or it is because of the not fit for use category of error. Now another challenge which is coming up is it is posed by machine learning models. I mean, there are uh, uh, typically, I mean, financial services industry is pretty conservative in terms of using any new technology or any new technique unless until it is proven, and it is rightly so because they sit very close to the money, and any small error can lead or result into huge losses. The problem with machine learning models is again, I mean, there is a significant component of these models which can be treated as a black box. So interpretability of these models is a challenge. However, banking industry has started embracing these models, particularly in the areas which are not closely related to risk, but in the areas of say customer acquisition, in the areas of financial crime, or cyber risk and other areas, they have started using these models extensively. Moving on to the next slide here, I'm trying to describe how the model risk management framework and how it is organized within a typical bank. So there is a model risk governance and policies within which the bank will determine uh, what could be classified as a model. If that model is classified, then there may be risk tiering for the models, whether it is a high risk model or medium risk or low risk model. And then there would be policies around how the bank will deal with high risk models or a low risk model. Uh, Within this framework there will be a model inventory is like a repository of all the models. Say if a bank is having say 1200 models, so this model inventory will have have details of all the models and the status of all the models, whether these models are developed, reviewed, validation is completed, annual review is completed or not, or something like that. Uh, the, then the other two aspects of governance are model risk appetite, how much risk bank is willing to take. So they decide for different category of risk types. They will determine how much appetite they have for those particular areas. For example, some banks may decide that they would like to take minimum risk on the operation side, but they may be willing to take a little higher on the market risk side, or maybe on the credit risk side. So risk appetite uh, 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 policies will determine how bank is planning to take exposures in different areas and how they're going to manage it. And then there will be roles and responsibilities determined for each function within the bank. Um, the function of model or the modeling value chain is classified into three lines. The first line is called a model development line. These are the people who develop models. I mean, whether it is a fresh model or it is an enhancement or a redevelopment, after some usage, they figured out that model is no more representing reality and it needs some revisions. So that work will be taken care of by these people. Uh, then model calibrations, model testing and implementation will also fall under first line, and they will also do the ongoing performance monitoring of the models on periodic basis. The second line of defense, if there are any errors which may happen because first line might have missed certain aspects, the second line, which we call as the validation line, will take care of those aspects. These two lines, first line and second line, are totally independent, and they have different reporting channels so that there are no influence on each other. So second line will take full scope validation in case it's a fresh model which is being validated for the first time. If it is a if it is an enhancement of the model or some changes are done, then it may be a again a full scope pre-validation, or it may be a targeted scope validation where we only check a certain aspects of the model. And then there will be annual review of models, and ongoing performance monitoring. So a model, a high risk model, uh, may not be validated every year. It may be, say, validated after second year, uh, uh, after every 2 years, whereas a low risk model may be revalidated with a frequency of, say, every 4 year or 5 years. However, there may be periodic reviews. So high risk model may have more frequent reviews, whereas a low risk model may have less frequent reviews. And then there is ongoing performance monitoring team, which keeps on monitoring the performance of these models. And whenever there is a deviation, significant deviation, they report, and then model go for enhancement or recalibration. The third layer is internal audit layer. So these people do periodic audit of sample of models, and if there are any discrepancies still left, they will report that, and then corrective action will be taken. Moving on to the next aspect. Uh, so risk steering of models is very important for effective model risk governance. I mean, as you know, the number of models in a typical bank would be very large, and managing all these models with the same rigor. I mean, monitoring or validating them periodically may not be possible because it requires a lot of cost and effort. So, as a best practice, a lot of banks have adopted tiering of risk models. They classify models as high risk, medium risk, or low risk. Most of the banks have, I mean, having worked with CRISIL, where we are managing the entire value chain of modeling, and have gone through more than, say, 15,000 models in last 3 years, 3 year itself. We can talk about some of the things which are happening in the industry. And on the risk steering side, a lot of banks have started implementing risk steering. Major banks have it in place. Most of them have classified models into 3 or 4 categories. There are a few who have taken 5 categories, but most of them are in the range of 3 to 4 categories. And risk steering is decided based on materiality, complexity, and other aspects like operationally, or design wise, how complex it is, or how much reliance bank is putting on this model for their decision making process, and what could be the material impact if something wrong happens with that model. Uh, the next slides, I will not spend much time on them because these are just an indicative complexity matrix. If we are classifying a model into high risk, medium risk, or low risk, so what kind of factors we can use, say, implementation platform, theoretical framework, range of interactions, etc. Similarly, on the materiality side, different category of models, whether these are value at risk models or economic capital models or deposit models, different type of matrices can be defined by banks to classify them into high, medium, and low. Uh, on the model reliance rating, models where banks put a lot of reliance for decision making on those models are classified as high, and not so important models are classified as low. So, I mean, in a nutshell, this is like the ABC of inventory management, where we identify which are the key models where we need to spend more time to make sure that they are doing what they are supposed to do. And for less important models, we are still putting the rigor in place, but the amount of effort and time we are investing is less. These are some of the model validation best practices. So some of the elements which we need to take care of when we are validating models, to check if there are uh, any errors, both in terms of say implementation errors or design errors, or uh, whether the model is fit for purpose or not. So initial assessment involves identifying the model risk and complexity. So at the time of validation or revalidation, the model developers or owners may define a particular risk rating for the model, but this is reassessed because portfolios may change over the period of time. The exposures may also change. So things may move from one category to another category. So there is a reassessment of model risk and complexity. Then model documentation is checked whether it is meeting. There are stringent guidelines from regulators that uh, the, the model owners have to uh, uh, write detailed model documents describing each and every element of the models, following SR 11.7 guidelines, so that even if the person who has developed the model leave the bank or moves around, the description is good enough for the other person to understand. So it does not remain like a black box. Then what is the purpose of model, and for what purpose it is being used? And if they figure out that in the initial assessment itself, the information provided is not sufficient or not up to the mark, it went back to model owner or model developer to provide that information. Uh, I will not get into every step of it because that is too detailed. But I think that the major steps are uh, initial assessment, followed by model assessment, model testing, and then we do model governance and model conclusions. In the conclusion stage, there would be a validation report, and if it is a regulatory model, then the report will be submitted to regulators. Um, the model rating may be revised or maintained, whether it is an upgrade or a downgrade, and the model may be approved. So if everything is fine, if is fine and okay, the model will be approved fully. There may be a conditional approval if we figure out that certain elements in the model can be improved, or there are some minor tweaks or changes required to make it more robust. Uh, However, if there are any major discrepancies, then the model is rejected. In case the model is rejected, depending upon the usage of the model maybe continue to use for certain period of time within the bank, and there may be a strict deadline in which they have to uh, uh, discard that model and recreate a fresh model which is robust and take care of it for purpose. This is another metric where which define how we can reduce the scope of validation exercise or model monitoring exercise. by skipping some of the elements in a high risk model. We can go really in deep and detail thorough analysis of every aspect. Whereas if it is a medium risk or low risk, we may skip some of the elements and may check them not so regularly, but after an interval. I'll move to the next section, I think, which is more important from today's call perspective. Uh, Implications and consequences of pandemic. Just to understand the situation, it is an unprecedented situation. None of us have seen a global economic shutdown of this nature. I mean, in our lifetime, we have no one have encountered such a case. I think the parallel in history is Spanish flu, which happened in 1918, 1920, so around 100 years back. Uh, we saw financial crisis in 2008, 2009, but that crisis was more of a financial crisis. This time it is more of a health crisis. Uh, in financial crisis, most of the government's uh, uh, assets or resources could be diverted to safeguard the financial services industry. But this time around, the focus is on safety of people. The first cut money is going for the health or safety of people, and banking may not be the first priority for them to save. Uh, there is a huge impact on human life, major disruptions. The things have changed significantly. Supply chains were broken. In earlier times, similar situations have happened, but the spread of those situations have been limited to a limited geography. This time, it happened across the world. Uh, uh, and the kind of impact it had was unprecedented. Uh, we have, I mean, just to see the kind of volatility we have seen in Dow Jones Index. It was hovering at around 12% in January 2020, and it went to around 100% in March, which was about 7 to 8 times jump. And peak to trough fall during the COVID, again, it was 37%. The markets were down 37%. So the shocks were unprecedented. And the models which we have built, whether they were capable of taking that shocks, uh, they were just not. Moving on to the next slide. So what has happened because of this pandemic? The models become inadequate. The models became inadequate, or they were not fit for the purpose. Uh, Typically, models are designed with assumptions and boundaries, and they are designed to predict a stable future or future in a narrow range. However, during this pandemic, most of these models are operating a few standard deviations away from the normal circumstances. And I mean, we know as we move away from mean, the error term increases. So the output these models were creating were not reliable. Uh, Model were breaching performance acceptability thresholds, which we have set out as part of say quarterly monitoring plans or other periodic monitoring plans. And then there was structural shift in the reality. I mean, we were classifying default in a certain way, but with moratorium extended by government and uh, payment holiday and all that, capturing data for those models, whether we should classify that as a default or as a delay. There were structural changes in the data, uh, which uh, 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 we were not able to understand how to handle these situations. Uh, there was lack of relevant data. The relationship between variables among the variables were broken because of the severe nature uh, uh, of, of, of the impact on the economic variables. Uh, there was lack of sufficient outcome in the sense we could have recalibrated these models uh, based on the new reality. But this new reality, we did not have enough view on what is this reality, because the things were changing on everyday basis. Even 9 months down the line, or about a year, if we take the world view, uh, we have no clue when this pandemic is going to end, and when the things will return to normal. So when we do not know what kind of outcome we are getting into, so it was kind of like a moving target. We were trying to chase, or trying to really recalibrate these models to moving targets, which was difficult and making them useless. Uh, then some of the models which we were using, they were using data with monthly rest, and now we could not wait for take decisions for a month. So there was no flexibility in the models. If we can recalibrate them using weekly data or daily data. The risk infrastructure, or systems from where the data was coming were rigid. Uh, that is the third point, lack of agility. I mean, theoretically, there were different things which we could have done. Looked at the alternative data sources to understand uh, uh, the behavior of these models. But the risk infrastructure in banks was rigid and did not allow a lot of flexibility to build into these models. So, in a nutshell, the models failed, and there were no fallback options. We did not know. The impact on business models was very high compared to the regulatory models. Regulatory models, to a certain extent, after the last crisis, I mean, we have done a lot of work in those areas. We have also understood some of the things which have had impact on the regulatory capital and all that, and some of the shocks, or stress testing which is being done using different scenarios are quite severe, and we're pretty close to, not I mean, very much far away from the deviations which we may have seen, or shocks which we may have seen due to COVID situation. However, business models fail miserably. For example, if we are trying to take a decision whether we should give a particular loan, or a credit card to an individual, the scoring, the credit scores were not changing dynamically, but things on the ground were changing very fast. People were losing jobs, and we were not sure how the variables are changing, whether the credit scores are staying there or they are moving. So the business models, or business decision models, had more severe impact as compared to the regulatory capital models. Um, so what was the solution? Decision making shifted to judgment of experts, since models were not giving reliable output. It became more people centric. Uh, Experts were giving their opinion. They were taking decisions, what could be the best in that particular scenario. Uh, However, the problem with this was, there were inconsistencies in applying different kind of adjustments or assumptions. So different experts may have different opinions, and there were a lot of inconsistencies which were coming into the system. And the last one is, there was a significant impact or increase in the effort required, both on the model development as well as on the model validation side. And initially, there was some disruption, because uh, offices were closed, people were asked to work from home. Although most of the banks have systems in place to allow work from home, but the infrastructure was not adequate to allow 100% people to work from home. Uh, Typically, 25 to 30% staff would be given permission to work from home. So the number of systems, laptops, or bandwidths were not capable of taking 100% load. I think initial 1.5 month also took a lot of toll on the effort which these people would have made in terms of reacting or remediating the situation. So with this crisis, CRISIL came out with timely publications. These are some of the publications. CRISIL rating or India-centric business, they have also come out with a lot of research reports on India markets. Uh, some of those things were quite dynamic, and they keep on shifting the estimates based on further information which was coming to them. Because I mean, all of us were chasing a moving target. But however, I would say, we did a decent job in trying to to understand what was happening and how we can manage that scenario. Moving on to specific areas. So I'm covering credit risk, market risk broadly, what kind of impact we have seen. In credit decisioning models, because models I mean, we were unable to rapidly change the credit worthiness, and it was changing very fast. Some of the sectors, for example, airline, hotel industry, tourism industry, things were coming to almost total shutdown. Some industries were still operating. There were more losses in some industries. So some of these scoring models were not able to capture this data or modify it, so they become inaccurate, and the immediate response uh, was to stop using these models, because any which way they were not supporting the robust decision making. The early warning systems, whether someone is going to default or not, those were also not giving us right signals, because the data inputs were not good. Uh, and then we saw that there was a surge in default. The immediate response was, we moved away from the lot of banks in the industry. They moved away from automated credit decisioning processes, and then they shifted to manual processes and applied expert judgment. Central bank or banks have come back with a lot of uh, lot of SOPs for customers or borrowers, in terms of, say, payment holiday, restructuring of distressed loan, or temporarily freezing repayment of credit facility. But this again, I mean, created another set of problems. Now we don't know what is the right classification of data. Regulators were trying to standardize definition of default. The regulations are coming in place, which are being applied from the beginning of 2022. However, with this payment holiday and all, we were not sure how to treat this. And then different countries were giving different kind of facilities, and being part of global banks, it was very difficult to decipher each country what kind of rulings are coming up, and taking care of those aspects. So immediate response was to move back to expert systems, expert judgment. And in future, I think, forward looking, we have to make modeling more agile. uh, create technology infrastructure so that we can enable quick recalibration of models and try to increase the use of alternative sources of data. There were a lot of data available about like Google was giving information on footfall for different cities, which could have been utilized, but our models were not enabled to make use of such type of information. Uh, now, because of surge in default, there was increasing use of overrides and monitoring. So for some time in future, we have to keep watch, at least I think for next couple of years, on borrowers who are availing payment holidays. We need to understand their behavior, whether they have taken these holidays because they actually needed it and they may default after the holiday is over, or is it because since they are getting this facility and they want to play conservative, so that is the reason why they are not paying. So there may be a lot of hidden things which we need to reveal as part of further analysis based on whatever data we are able to collect over the last 1 year or so. Moving on to market risk again, I mean the problems were similar. Higher volatility in the market resulted in higher capital charges, and uh, the reactions. Some of the models may be overreacting or underreacting, and because they were not working within the stipulated bands, the output of these models cannot be relied upon. So there were a lot more, I mean, exceptions created because the WAR numbers were not matching with actually what we were seeing in reality. So there were a lot more manual interventions or exceptions being created. Forward looking, what we can do is we can do further scenario analysis based on macroeconomic parameters. Uh, Look at some of the medium-term policy responses, how they're going to have impact on the capital markets. Although on the market risk side, I would say the markets have gone down, but they have recovered very fast. So some of the issues which we were facing on this side have been taken care of. But credit risk is still, I mean, a worrying area because we have not seen what is going to come from there. A lot of things or problems are getting delayed or hidden. Similarly, on the liquidity risk models, uh, liquidity models fail to predict large cash outflows, portfolio rebalancing, uh, unable to measure liquidity buffer positions. Uh, Immediate response. The governments have reacted very fast. They uh, they directed liquidity towards banks. They also asked banks that banks will not pay dividends or they will not allow buyback of shares so that they can conserve their capital. And then on the liquidity side, again, I think because we have faced this 2008 2009 liquidity crisis, the response was much better, and the amount of shocks which we have seen uh, were in line what we would have uh, uh, anyway planned for it in the extreme severe situations. Way forward, again, I mean, we need to clearly define the purpose and boundaries of the model, build alternative structure models, and create transparency where the banks are actually reporting a lot more on the various liquidity ratios. On the regulatory capital side, I think this was not as much challenging because to some extent easing from the regulators or government has reduced their stress here. Uh, However, from the forward-looking point of view, we should build different scenarios and see what could be the best case or the worst case outcome. And if we figure out that there is a need, then we should revisit capital investment or capital spending plans. So, what are the key learnings? I would say, I mean, we are running out of time, but just to reiterate some of the points. So managing model risk, one of the key learning is we have progressed very well on the fundamental error side. So the design errors or implementation errors, coding errors, and all that, because of the strong second line and third line of defense, those errors have been taken care of. But I think we still have a long way to cover when it is coming to fit for purpose models. Uh, So we need to clearly define for these models what is the purpose and what are the boundaries within which these models can work, and clearly define when these models are not going to work, so that people there are policies around when to switch to expert judgment and when to stay with these models. Currently, those policies were not in place. Uh, this will increase the consistency in application of expert judgment in extreme situations. Risk steering was very important, and it became very handy for our clients who have strong risk steering systems in place. They were able to manage it in a much better way because they could focus on high materiality and high reliance models and reduce the impact considerably. And then next is build alternative structural models, which say mathematical models which do not rely on data, which we can fall back in times of extreme crisis situation. Increase agility, both in terms of usage of data, so we can switch over from say monthly data to daily data, or if we need to recalibrate models, we can do it quickly. And also, I mean, if whether we can handle alternative sources of data. However, there is an issue of data privacy. If we are using alternative data sources, some of the countries in Europe, European Union have very stringent laws around data privacy, so we have to take care of those aspects. The third point is making people aware, make use of their experience and expertise. The expertise of people, we cannot ignore it. And we have seen it again and again during the time of crisis, which is of such magnitude. Expertise of people becomes very important, and they are the people who steer us out of the crisis. Another important aspect is that model risk management should be important for every decision maker. There are a lot of people who are users of these models, so they should be made aware of what are the model assumptions and what are the boundaries of these models, when they should use these models and when they should avoid using these models. I have 1 minute, but I have one more slide to cover, so maybe I'll go ahead with that. So what is the way forward for us? The crisis is still not over. We are still learning through the process, so we are not sure at this stage, still learning. We learn with each crisis, but then every time, next time it is always something totally different and unprecedented. So, not sure whatever learnings we will have from this episode may be useful for us to handle the next one. We can explore new ways of capturing financial risk. Some of the areas are like epidemic modeling. Climate risk modeling is already coming in banking industry. So regulators are pushing us to include climate risk as part of the financial risk for banks. Uh, Another aspect could be, working on behavioral models, because a person's behavior in normal circumstances and the behavior in in crisis situation is totally different. So if we can model or have models of people how they behave in different kind of crisis situations, I think we could understand some of the aspects like payment behavior or something like that. I think that's all I wanted to cover. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take them.
So there already are a few questions. So first and foremost, which machine learning models are used by CRISIL?
So we are using different type of machine learning models, gradient boost models. I mean, it's all category of models we are using. However, I would say on the risk side, financial risk side, uh, the use of machine learning models is not that high. It is much more used on the financial crime side, or the customer analytics side.
So another person asks, how do you model for private firms?
So, I mean, I need to understand the context of this question. So, is it about valuation of private firms, or I mean, what is the context?
Sir, I'm not sure about that. We'll get back to this.
So, if it is around valuation of private firms, so there are different techniques available. I mean, as you may be aware, CRISIL is a rating agency, and we have data on 15,000 plus small and medium enterprises, which are private organizations, and then there are other data sets also which are available. So we have huge data which is available on these organizations, and when we are doing the valuation, so we are not doing this valuation in isolation. If the organizations are coming to us, then they are sharing information, or revealing information about their revenues, about their cash flows, the investments and all that, and based on that, we are building the models.
Sir, regarding the structural models, how
Mhm.
do you model the credit risk of a private firm?
So, I mean, I haven't thought about it. Maybe I will think about it how to take this. When we are talking about structural models, so what we are doing currently is, say,
So are they Merton models?
so I mean, we are still doing some sort of analysis in case of, say, low default portfolios where we do not see much data. We are still making use of some of the mathematical models to do the predict and do the simulations. But what we are doing currently is, in such scenarios, we are uh, we are talking to different banks, and kind of creating a industry-wide utility. We call it as RISE, Risk Infrastructure Solution, where multiple banks are coming together and they are sharing their data, so that the pool data will be sufficient for us to build models. What we are what I'm talking about structural models is like, I mean, where we are trying to represent reality in terms of a mathematical equation, and then we are not using uh, historical data. So this could be used as an alternative model, not as the only model to represent the reality. So we have to supplement things, because if we are relying on a completely structural model, or a mathematical model, there may be situations when they may not they may not represent reality in normal circumstances.
Sir, like Moody's uses expected default frequency. Is
Mhm.
there something like that for India as well?
Uh, so there is a there I mean so there is a expected India. I am not aware, because I'm not representing India business here. But what we are doing globally is, so once we are calculating this probability of defaults and exposures to default, and we are calculating loss given default. So these probabilities are worked out, and currently what is happening is, we are using current expected credit loss models. So CECL models are being done, where we do not evaluate loss for a particular instance, whereas we evaluate a particular loan throughout their life, and then do the expected credit loss, and take it to the current year or current period, and then we pool these losses to estimate how much capital may be at risk.
Sir, and the last question of the evening, could you please quote an example of risk for which banks uses models in banking?
Sorry, can you repeat this question?
Sir, it's a question on Zoom.
Mhm.
Could you please quote an example of risk for which banks use models in banking?
Bank use models in banking. I'm
Uh,
not able to understand.
Ms. Pavitra, if you could explain a little more, that would make the question easier. Ms. Pavitra, can you hear? I can you hear Ms. Pavitra?
Models in banking means, I'm not able to interpret.
Probably, I'll just reframe the question.
Mhm.
Which models do banks use to
So
measure risk?
bank use all sort of models. I have spoken about different category of models which banks are using. Okay, so there are pricing models. Then there are market risk models. There are credit risk models, counterparty credit risk models. There are IFRS 9 models, CECL models. Uh, there are models on the asset management side, wealth management side. So I'm not able to. So, and in each category, in each class of models, uh, some classes are more say stochastic models, or mathematical models. For example, in pricing of derivative products or valuation, the models are more mathematical and mathematical in nature. Whereas if say we are using PPNR, or pre-provisioning PPNR models, the models are more statistical in nature. Some of them maybe econometric models. But all sorts of models are being used across the spectrum in the bank. And we are talking about, say 1,000 plus models. I would say the spread between statistical models and mathematical models. Maybe even in an investment bank, they may be using more mathematical models. But if we are talking about retail bank, then they may be using more statistical and econometric models.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the
I'm sorry
informative
about
webinar.
I mean, I could not interpret the question correctly, so I'm not sure whether I've answered it.
Sir, later on, she could get back to asking the question sometime. We could send you a consolidated list of the questions that are still left. And sir, it was a very knowledgeable and very in a very well explained webinar. Thank you so much, and thank you to all our viewers for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks very much for all the people who have attended this session, and thanks to Professor Jaydev and Aishwarya who invited me for this session.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.